Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Get the Twinkle Fruit ability in Data-Based Gene System. Chapter 81. To trigger the ability to deduce the speed of light, you must first have enough knowledge related to the deduction goal. For example, if Yufeng wants to deduce the PIM particle formula, he must have a deep research in the field of subatoms and understand the various knowledge in it, and at the same time, he must do a certain research and understanding of the finished PIM particle in order to trigger the speed of light deduction ability and successfully deduce the PIM particle formula. The most important thing is to have a lot of knowledge. This is naturally not a problem for Yufeng. With his ability to memorize at the speed of light, it is too easy to acquire a large amount of knowledge. Of course, strictly speaking, all this is only Yufeng's speculation. Whether his ability to deduce the speed of light is really so amazing, whether it is useful for everything, and a lot of practice is required. Thinking of this, Yufeng's impromptu excitement soared. There was no more bragging with Tony, and after glancing at the extremely rough steel armor design drawings in his hand, the corners of Yufeng's mouth turned up, and then disappeared in a blink of an eye. "Oh, teacher, don't go." Tony saw Yufeng leave suddenly, and he was anxious. But suddenly his eyes widened. The steel armor design drawing slowly floated in front of him, but it was no longer the same as before, and the structural design had become richer. Seeing this, Tony's gaze lit up. Practice and training in light-speed reasoning doesn't happen overnight. Although Yufeng's reading speed is extremely fast, his energy is also limited every day, and as the days in Stark Industry pass day by day, until it takes almost 10 days, he remembers all the books and materials related to the subatomic quantum field and so on, forming an eternal memory. In the meantime, Yufeng also called Jean over to help him peek into the PIM formula memory in Dr. Pim's mind. The peeping was successful. Jean easily obtained the formula for the PIM particle. However, Yufeng did not give up the continued deduction of the PIM particle formula. Because he knew that although the original Ant-Man Dr. Pim had developed the PIM particle, which could shrink people to the size of ants, but there is no way to shrink to the molecular level, or even the level of microscopic particles such as atoms. In other words, Dr. Pim's PIM particle formula is actually imperfect. If it was before, but already with the ability to deduce the speed of light, Yufeng certainly would not be satisfied with just having a flawed formula. If he wants to study, he must study the most perfect formula. The shrinking effect of the PIM particle is actually not too effective for me. What works most for me is that special magnification effect. Quote, "Before I knew it, another few days had passed. Remembering the swelling jade black light particles in the dark dimension before, Yufeng's eyes couldn't help but light up. The origin power of those Dormammu that I have absorbed has completely entered the second gear, saturation state of the black light particles all over my body, thus also strengthening the power of ordinary state light particles. But that's not enough. The PIM particle is equivalent to a power catalyst, which can make my light particles sharply amplify the energy and burst out. The light particles in the black light state will become a restrained form like seeking jade, and the light particles in the ordinary state. If you zoom into the extreme, you may have the power of the sun exploding." In the laboratory, Yufeng has a test tube of PIM particles in his hand. Suddenly the tube bursts. The PIM particles scattered in all directions, but suddenly seemed to freeze in the air, and then these PIM particles all merged into a light particle on Yufeng's body. The light particles on Yufeng's body can not only be affected by the PIM particles when they are in the black light state. Light particles in ordinary states too. And the impact will be even more dramatic. I saw a golden light flickering on Yufeng's body, and then a golden light particle soared, and one after another golden light burst out like flames, and finally formed a large golden red energy fireball that was as tall as a person. The bursting energy churned in it, and it seemed that it would burst in the next second, releasing an unparalleled huge power. This is the reaction produced by ordinary golden light particles after absorbing PIM particles. If the black light particles are restrained like black holes, then ordinary golden light particles are like the sun that will burst at any time. Each of the two expands to the extreme, and the power will be cosmic level. Maybe it can reach the level of killing the cosmic demon god in seconds. It's just that there is still a long way to go to get to that extent. Having the power of a black hole or the explosion of the sun is just an idea of Yufeng. This is the effect of ordinary PIM particles. Next, let's take a look at the effect of the PIM particle produced under the perfect grade PIM particle formula. Yu Feng's eyes flashed with expectation, the corners of his mouth turned up, and another extremely delicate small test tube appeared in his hand. Yes, after several days of light-speed deduction research, Yu Feng has deduced the perfect level PIM particle formula and tried to make a perfect level PIM particle, different from the original Ant-Man Dr. Pym. This delicate small test tube contains pale golden particle liquid, and these particle liquids are the perfect grade PIM particles made by Yu Feng. Merely, this perfect grade PIM particle is only perfect in theory. What effect can be produced depends on the next situation to be determined. Perfect grade PIM particles, and I have also weakened the shrinking effect, focused and strengthened the expansion amplification effect, which should make my black and gold two-color light particles expand more and be more powerful, right? Yu Feng thought secretly in his heart while his mind moved. Suddenly, the energy of the light particles that were about to explode before was extinguished and dissipated. At the same time, a black light and a golden light faintly flickered in the air. At the same time, the test tube ruptured, and the light gold particle liquid in it was immediately divided into two parts, and quickly fused into the past under the attraction of the zero matter phagocytosis contained in the light particles. Yu Feng's gaze condensed slightly, and his gaze left. This laboratory is a private laboratory specially assigned to him by Howard, and the surrounding walls are built with a security level, but they can reach the level of anti-missile protection. There are no more than 10 experimental laboratories like this in the entire Stark industry. Howard assigned such an important laboratory to Yu Feng, which shows the importance he attaches to Yu Feng. In fact, it was also because Yu Feng saved Tony that Howard valued him another level, otherwise as an 8 or 9-year-old child of Yu Feng, he would not be able to own such a private laboratory. Due to the extremely high level of safety of this laboratory, the location is also important. Located on the top floor of the Stark headquarters industrial building, it is basically close to where Howard usually works. It's the middle of the night. The entire building was largely empty, and the gates were blocked. However, this is nothing to Yu Feng Lai. Once he enters the research state, he will not distinguish between day and night. Right now, Yu Feng was in the laboratory, and when he saw that the gold and black light particles fused with the perfect grade PIM particles, his pupils couldn't help but dilate slightly. What kind of changes will there be? He was very curious in his heart. Suddenly, at the moment when the two light particles in different states fused with the perfect grade PIM particles, time seemed to stand still for a second, and then, strange cracks suddenly appeared in the sky above the entire Stark Tower. This crack was like black lightning, clicking and cracking, and suddenly burst open. The next moment, uproar. The deep and dark flow of energy poured down from those cracks, dancing and rolling around the entire Stark building, so that at this moment, the entire Stark building seemed to enter a strange place, hidden in the dark turbulence. So, what is that? In the middle of the night, some drunken fools wandering the streets opened their eyes wide, looking at the strange scene around the towering Stark building in the distance, and they all showed incredible faces, rubbed their eyes, and thought that they were blinded. At the same time, within a radius of thousands of meters, all the lights flickered, emitting a nuisance of electricity. Soon, bang bang, all the lights burst. It was as if an invisible energy was sweeping around, and everything was about to fall into darkness. But at this moment, from Stark's greatness, a huge explosion suddenly burst out, of golden energy glow. As if the sun suddenly lit up at this moment, Stark's big heart, it was as if the entire city of New York had become daylight at this moment. And then, rumble, an earth-shaking explosion swept around. Then, in the eyes of all the people who were awakened in the night, they saw the Stark building standing high in the distance, burst. Howard woke up in his sleep that his family lived in the wealthy district on Malibu Beach, some distance from Stark Industries headquarters, but the dazzling light still affected him immediately. When he and his wife looked sleepily at the direction of the explosion of the Stark Tower, they couldn't help but open their eyes and completely wake up. They looked at each other. Immediately getting up, Howard dialed the special phone on Jarvis's side. Xavier School for Gifted Teenagers. Professor X looked at a document under the light of the office. There were too many things to do in the early days of school construction. Many times X will stay up late to deal with something. But at this moment, his gaze suddenly froze. A dazzling light suddenly flashed in the sky. It's the direction of Stark Industries. Looking out the window, Professor X's brows furrowed deeply. Not long after, Hank hurriedly ran over in his pajamas, looked at X, and said anxiously, "Charles, Stark has news, something happened over there." Quote, "Well, I see, let's go to Stark Industries right away," X said, pushing up the wheelchair. But suddenly paused, because at this moment, a little girl appeared next to the door. The strange vision of the sudden explosion of the Stark Industrial Headquarters building attracted many eyes in just a few minutes, and many people, both bright and dark, and many forces were alarmed. Especially the forces of some radical Hydra. They know that Howard Stark is one of the important members of the SSR, specifically against Hydra, and now that the Stark Industrial Building is exploding, where is the reason why they will not pay attention and make trouble? In addition, some hidden forces have also quietly moved, such as Essex Company. However, they could not have imagined that this explosion was just an experimental accident. Well, looking at the Stark Industrial Building, which had basically turned into ruins in front of him, and only a small half-broken floor still standing, Yufeng couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed in his heart. That perfect-grade PIM particle had indeed changed his two different states of light particles, and their power had become stronger, but another special situation has emerged. That is, the two, actually merged. The golden particles of light, which were filled with bursting energy, and the black particles of light, which gathered deep dark energy, fused with each other. In an instant, it actually opened a crack that communicated the power of the dark dimension. When that crack appeared, Yufeng could even faintly hear Dormammu's angry roar, and then, I don't know what special reaction it produced, with the influx of a large amount of dark energy, it exploded. It's really a terrifying explosion. Yufeng couldn't help but cry and laugh in his heart. This time he accidentally blew up the Stark building, which really made him never expect it, and this was the moment he forcibly controlled and stopped it at the moment when the golden light particles and the black light particles became larger and fused under the action of the perfect-grade PIM particles. Otherwise, it's not just about blowing up the Stark building now. 2 days later, the person came to meet Yufeng surprised him little bit. "This, Winter Soldier." Quote, Yufeng's footsteps paused, and he glanced at the person in front of him with a little interest. Looking at the classic outfit that is the same as in the film and television comics, it is obvious that the person blocking him in front of him is the Winter Soldier, that is, the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes. After Bucky fell into a cliff and lost an arm after World War II, he was secretly transformed by the remnants of Hydra in the Soviet Union, and eventually transformed into an assassination and spy master, and has been carrying out various secret assassination and intelligence reconnaissance missions for Hydra around the world. Now that the Stark building suddenly exploded, it is not surprising that Hydra sent the Winter Soldier over for intelligence reconnaissance. However, Yufeng only glanced at it more, and then raised his foot and walked forward again. If it weren't for the Winter Soldier, there would be some past life sentiment bonuses, and Yufeng wouldn't even bother to look at it. As the footsteps lifted, the Winter Soldier's special metal mechanical left arm suddenly lifted, and a special electromagnetic interference wave spread out, and at the same time, the muzzle of the M1911 gun in his hand suddenly lit up, and a scorching bullet shot towards Yufeng. However, the bullet was still useless and went straight through. The Winter Soldier's gaze froze. Why is this mutant not affected by electromagnetic interference specifically designed to affect the ability of mutants? Is the ability too strong? Thinking about it, the Winter Soldier will strengthen the electromagnetic interference, and at the same time, a pulse wave that can cause people to faint is released from the left arm of the metal machine. However, at this moment, the Winter Soldier's gaze shrunk. I saw that my metal left arm actually came out of nowhere, already broken. The fracture incision is smooth and there is an electric current. At the same time, as if he felt something, the Winter Soldier turned around sharply, and saw that the suspected mutant 8 or 9-year-old boy had actually arrived behind him at some point, and at the same time the broken metal left arm, it was easily held in the hands of that little boy. How is that possible? The Winter Soldier was horrified. Yufeng glanced lightly at the broken metal left arm in his hand, which belonged to the Winter Soldier. The manufacturing process is good. But unfortunately, with his insight that he can now light speed a set of steel armor far beyond today's decades, he can no longer see this kind of rags, and he throws it away with a clatter and accurately throws it in the trash can on the side of the road. The corner of the Winter Soldier's mouth twitched. Watching Yu Feng throw away his metal left arm like garbage, although he looked slow and lazy, a chill suddenly rose in his heart. Although the other party seems to be just an 8 or 9-year-old child, if you want to kill him, it will definitely be as easy as slaughtering a dog. What kind of horrible child is this? Phew. At this moment, suddenly black shadows suddenly attacked. Since the Winter Soldier has appeared, it is naturally indispensable to other members. Those black shadows looked like elite warriors belonging to 9, one by one, wearing tactical vests and holding assault rifles, which seemed to be a well-equipped reinforcement in terms of numbers. Seeing this, Yu Feng couldn't help but feel that the snake's speed was really fast enough, and as soon as the Stark building exploded on the front foot, these guys were the first to rush here. Looking at this, there should have been some special purpose, and it was already lurking around the Stark Tower, right? Those Hydra elite warriors obviously saw the scene of Yu Feng casually throwing away the Winter Soldier's metal left arm, and they all knew that the child in front of them should be a mutant with special abilities, and one of their abilities was to be able to dodge or even ignore bullet attacks in some way, which could not be underestimated. So when they appeared one by one, they quickly surrounded Yu Feng. Fire! One of the fierce men with scars on his face flashed coldly in his eyes, and ordered without the slightest hesitation. In his opinion, this mutant child may have the ability to dodge or ignore the attack of a bullet, but the continuous bullet attacks from 360 degrees in all directions, even if you can ignore and dodge, you will still be affected, right? What's more, their weapons are not just bullets. There are also electromagnetic pulse guns specifically for mutants. When those Hydra elite warriors heard this, they pulled the trigger towards Yu Feng without the slightest hesitation. Seeing this scene, the Winter Soldier not far away shook his head and sighed. As soon as his body moved, he picked up his metal left arm in the trash can and left. Because he knew that those Hydra warriors should be finished. Sure enough, the moment you pulled the trigger, suddenly, everyone's eyes widened. Then there was an extra blood hole on their foreheads, and they saw that in front of each of them, there was a black hole muzzle pointed at them. And the one with the gun is their man. I don't know when, the muzzle of all of them changed from pointing the direction of the mutant child to pointing at their own people, and before they could react, they became each other's snatching revenants. The fierce Hydra warrior with a scar on his face and holding an electromagnetic pulse gun was stunned at first. When he saw that his subordinates actually fell to the ground with an extra blood hole on their foreheads in an instant, his pupils contracted violently, and his gaze towards Yu Feng was already filled with incomparable horror. You, what the hell did you do? Quote, he screamed in horror. And at this moment, there was a roar of cars not far away. Looking at the signs on those cars, it was Stark Industries. Seeing this, Yu Feng smiled slightly. Then suddenly a circle of magical energy sparks bloomed from the space, turning into a teleportation wormhole leading to the mirror dimensional space, from which Yu Feng took out a piece of precision instruments, secret experiments, computer data, and so on that originally existed in Stark Industries. These are all things that Yu Feng felt ruined in the explosion and conveniently put them into the mirror dimensional space using magic. At this moment, some of the things that were not too useful to him, but extremely useful to Howard, were placed by Yu Feng in the hands of the fierce Hydra warrior and beside him. This guy couldn't help but be stunned. Because Yu Feng's movements were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he didn't even see the magic teleportation hole, but he felt his eyes light up, followed by the surroundings and many more things in his hands. What are you doing? He looked at Yu Feng with some horror, watching his subordinates die inexplicably, and he had subconsciously feared the 8 or 9-year-old boy in front of him. Of course I want you to carry the pot, Yu Feng said with a bright smile. Boom. A classic 70s model of an Armaston sports car sped by, followed by a dozen heavy military armored vehicles. Howard looked at the Stark Tower, which had been completely reduced to ruins not far away, in the sports car, and his face could be said to be extremely difficult to see. This Stark building is more than just a building. There are many research projects, each of which is worth tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions. Especially the various advanced weapons studied by Stark Industries, it can be said that if any country in the world can control the arms and weapons developed by Stark Industries, its international status will be improved in an instant, and the military strength of the entire country will reach an absolute top level. So there are many forces around the world that are eyeing Stark Industries. But no one dared to touch Stark. Not only is Stark very rich and supported by the government, but Stark also has such a secret agent organization as SSR, and the intelligence gathering ability is very terrifying. But anything that can be considered a threat has been included in the SSR intelligence network, monitoring the every move of those who are dangerous. Everyone is attracted by the apparent economic strength and scientific research strength of Stark Industries, but they can't imagine that behind Stark Industries, there is also a network of intelligence contacts that runs through almost the world. Howard never expected that today, someone would dare to bomb the Stark building. And it actually blew up so thoroughly. They didn't collect any intelligence beforehand. Look at the terrifying Stark building that exploded in ruins. It's really bad. If he finds out who did it, he will definitely not be spared. The more Howard looked at it, the more angry he became, and the corners of his eyes twitched, but he still tried his best to calm down. He looked at a middle-aged woman beside him. "Paige, what do you think about this?" The woman sitting on Howard's side was not his wife, but a woman who was lifting the hem of her skirt and sticking a gun into the side of her thigh. Seeing this, Howard couldn't help but be slightly embarrassed. "Paige, how old are you? Do you still want to go to the battlefield and shoot?" Quote, "How is it to beat around the corner and say that I can't be old?" Quote. Paige glared at Howard, looking at the bombed Stark Tower, but a slightly excited light appeared in her eyes. "Although I am old, my marksmanship is practiced every day. If I sit in the office like this every day, my bones will age faster." Quote. Saying that, Paige smiled slightly. Howard was faintly in a trance. The middle-aged Paige has more crow's feet at the corners of her eyes, but at this moment, she is like a sonorous rose in the army, and she is still very vibrant. Seeing that Paige quickly hid the equipment, and the skirt was exactly like an elegant lady, Howard couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Oh, Paige, I don't have the energy of yours. But then again, this explosion in my Stark building was too bizarre, and there was no sign at all." Quote, "I recently heard that several officials have been assassinated on the Soviet side, and our intelligence shows that Hydra's power has gradually shifted to the territory of the Soviet Union." Paige's eyes flickered, and she said slowly, "Obviously, Hydra is preparing to take advantage of the continuous fermentation of the Cold War and use the Soviet Union to do something. They seem to have cultivated some amazing fighters with extremely strong assassination and espionage abilities. Perhaps this explosion will be related to them. After all, there should be a lot of valuable information hidden in your building, right?" Quote. Howard frowned slightly. "Hydra. But where did Hydra have the guts to dare to blow up Stark Mansion directly like this? This is simply declaring war with him directly." Seriously, Howard didn't quite believe it was Hydra's business. Today's Hydra has almost been forced to the Soviet side by his SSR, even if he gradually controls the Soviet regime, but for the SSR is still a chicken and a dog, a group of clowns left after the defeat of the Red Skull. How can he turn around and bomb his Stark building? Just thinking about it, suddenly Howard's gaze froze. Seeing the place illuminated by the searchlight of the armored vehicle not far away, a corpse appeared in one place. The corpses were all well equipped, and at first glance they were strictly trained soldier agents, and in front of these corpses, there was a fierce guy standing stunned, in his hands, and beside him, Howard's eyes widened. In the hands of that guy and next to him are the high-tech weapons, machinery and a large number of scientific research materials that were originally in the Stark Industrial Building. Oops. The fierce Hydra warrior with a scar on his face saw a large number of military armored vehicles coming in front of him. His face suddenly changed, and he subconsciously looked at the 8 or 9-year-old boy. But where can you still see the little boy? Seeing those cars coming towards him with full horsepower, he did not hesitate at all, and directly prepared to run, and at the same time subconsciously threw away those Stark industrial things in his hand, but just about to throw it, after glancing at it, he immediately took it back. These are actually weapons and equipment and materials secretly researched in Stark Industries. Good stuff. Immediately, I took a few more pieces and started running. But with such a delay, bullets have already been fired from afar, either making several deep holes in the ground, or splashing crackling Mars. The Hydra warrior was indeed fierce enough, and while returning fire with an assault rifle in his hand, he quickly retreated, and disappeared into the darkness. But at this moment, rumble, a car slammed into the other direction. At the same time, the car door opened, and a woman jumped out of the car, the gun in her hand was raised extremely quickly at the moment of jumping, aiming, and shooting. Bang! Scorching bullets came at a rapid pace. Seeing this, the fierce Hydra warrior's face suddenly changed, and he had to dodge. However, the bullet did not fly towards him, but flew straight towards the car that was rushing forward, and there were several bundles of explosives in it. As the bullet flew in, rumble. Suddenly, a huge roar sounded. Although the Hydra warrior was not close, he was not killed at once, but he was directly blown out. Pong fell to the ground with a loud sound, glanced incredulously at the woman in the distance, and then fainted very dryly. Snap! Paige, who came walking on high heels, turned up the corners of her mouth and put the gun away, which still showed her sonorous rose like heroism in the army. Phew! Just then, Howard's sports car drove up. Howard got out of the car and looked at Paige, and then looked at the sad vehicle that was blown to pieces, and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Paige, you are too messy, you got out of the car just to steal a car and carry out such a dangerous raid. Quote. Paige smiled slightly. You'll reimburse Howard anyway, besides, I've caught it. Quote. And Howard, you'd better hurry up and put away these research materials of yours, otherwise you may never see them again. Saying that, Paige glanced at the materials that were about to be engulfed in fire. Seeing this, Howard's whole hair was about to explode, and he quickly sent someone to clean up all the things. Seeing this, Paige smiled slightly, followed by looking at the warrior who was blown up and fainted, ready to find out the identity of this person from some clues, where he came from, and what he wanted to do. Well, what you want to do is probably already known, and the stolen goods are obtained, and it is clear that the entire Stark Tower explosion is inseparable from this person. Looking at this outfit, it seems to have the style of Hydra. Is it really a Hydra person? Paige thought while carefully observing the past. But just then a voice sounded. These are agents from Hydra. Huh. The voice was steady, but it was clearly a boy's voice, and Paige looked up with a slight surprise. I saw that a little boy had actually come to her at some point, and the old god was looking at her with a cheeky look, and when he saw her raise his head, the little boy also looked at her, and his eyes seemed to have a strange light. Huh. Paige couldn't help but chuckle lightly, slightly strange, and said strangely, little friend, where are you from? Quote. I'm not a child, you can call me you. Yu Feng said. As for where it came directly from that side. Quote. Saying that, Yu Feng pointed to the tight and solid car and the secret agent soldiers that had been surrounded in the circle. Seeing this, Paige couldn't help but be a little speechless. A small child of 8 or 9 years old actually broke through the blockade of a group of experienced SSR workers and broke in. This feels incredible and impossible. Just when Paige's face was strange, Howard also saw Yu Feng in his busyness, and immediately walked over in 3 or 2 steps. You, why did you run here? Quote. Saying that, he introduced to Paige. Paige, this is the, I told you, the mutant child I found from the mutant school for exchange learning. Quote. Oh, this is the, Feather, you call the mutant kid who saved Tony's troublemaker. Quote. Paige's eyes lit up when she heard this, looked at Yu Feng, and immediately became interested, and couldn't help but touch Yu Feng's face, and said with a smile, I don't think anything when I just look at the photos, but right now, it's really a cute boy. Quote. Quote. Yu Feng was speechless. I'm very handsome, but please don't touch it, I'm. Come, you, hurry up and call Aunt Paige. Paige then laughed. The corners of Yu Feng's mouth couldn't help twitching. Aunt Paige. Well, at his current age of 8 or 9 years, it is indeed normal to call Paige like this, but Yu Feng always feels a little strange. Glancing at the Paige in front of him, who was already old, but still showed the charm of his youth, Yu Feng rolled his eyelids speechlessly, and said with a faint look, if I call you that, can I get any benefits? Quote. Benefits. Paige was slightly stunned when she heard this. But soon he burst out laughing, glanced at Yu Feng interestingly, and said with a smile. Well, call me Aunt Paige, and I'll take you to the SSR department and study some good stuff for you. Listen to Howard, you like to read and study some strange things, don't you? Aunt Paige's sighed, but there are a lot of good things to study. Quote. Yu Feng was stunned when he heard this, and his face couldn't help but be strange. Howard on the side was a little crying and laughing. What is this? Taking you to the SSR department has long been a good thing, but Yufeng has wanted to study more in Stark Industry recently, so Howard gave Yufeng a personal experimental laboratory, and by the way, let Yufeng take Tony's Fool Boy every day. However, now that the Stark building has exploded, Yufeng can no longer stay here, and he must be sent to the SSR department for good protection. Although he didn't tell you about going to the SSR department, how could a child as smart as you not detect the flickering meaning in Paige's words? Howard saw that the scene was embarrassed for a while, and wanted to say something, but saw Paige smile slightly at this time, and then added another sentence. At the same time, I will also grant you special permissions of level 10. Level 10 special permissions. Howard's face changed on the side. 10 levels of authority. Full name, Scientific Strategy Core Level 10 Agent Intelligence and Mission Gain Permission. SSR is a secret service organization. Paige was a secret agent when she was young, and has cooperated with Howard for many years, one with excellent secret agent ability, and the other with strong economic and scientific research strength gradually reached the current position. With the fate of older politicians and agents, Paige and Howard are now very qualified SSR members. Coupled with the continuous changes of the times, with the efforts of the two, SSR has become stronger and stronger, and gradually ushered in transformation and reform again and again. The hierarchical authority system is one of the important reforms. Because as SSR grows, intelligence becomes more and more complex. Simple intelligence, complex intelligence, special intelligence, high-risk intelligence, and so on and so forth. In any era, intelligence is always an extremely important thing, and the authority rating actually already exists, but Paige has now made this authority grading system more perfect. All members of the SSR are divided by level 1 to 10 authority status. Level 1 to level 5 permissions are considered low to mid-range levels. The 6th level and 7th level permissions belong to the middle and high end, and the SSR members who generally have such permissions are all old agents with very old qualifications. And as for levels 8, 9, 10, that's absolute high-end authority. Especially level 10. Members with such permissions, to be honest, simply do not exist in the SSR at the moment. Even Paige and Howard do not have such authority. Of course, although they do not have 10-level permissions, Paige and Howard are eligible to nominate 10-level permissions. As long as he has the support of Paige and Howard, with the current status of the two of them, Yufeng can definitely successfully obtain the 10-level authority authorization. If Yufeng was granted a 10-level permission, then, Yufeng will become the first existence with 10-level permissions since the SSR was established. Paige, Howard opened his mouth to say something. But seeing Paige smile slightly at this time, looked at Yufeng, and said, what do you think? Level 10 permissions are fun. Quote. Yufeng couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Level 10 permissions are fun. Can you not be so hasty? Of course, he knew that the 10-level authority was the existence of one. It's just that he can't figure it out a little that Paige actually wants to give him 10-level permissions. What is the situation? Has his personality charm actually reached a level? Maybe Paige knows something special about me. Yufeng couldn't help but secretly guess in his heart. As an old qualified agent, Paige naturally does not make very hasty decisions, and everything should be meaningful. And for Yufeng, this 10-level authority in vain. If you don't take it for nothing, you won't lose it anyway, but there are huge benefits. Because of the 10-level permission, he can study space gems at will, and even use SSR's intelligence gathering ability to collect other, mysterious substances, and other traces of infinity stones. Space gem and time gem, he probably knows where it is. The mind gem is estimated to still be in the hands of the leader of Chittori. The power gem is on a barren planet in outer space. The soul gem has not a single clue. Then in addition to space gems and time gems, there are other infinity stones that exist on Earth right now. That's all that's left for ether particles, the reality gem. It's just that although Yufeng knows that the reality gem is on Earth, that place is more similar to an existence in another dimensional time and space, and he doesn't know the precise location very well. Therefore, the SSR level Intelligence Information Authority has a big effect. As for the Caliban side, just let it be, when it may bring him some surprises. After all, Caliban's intelligence network is extremely special. Unlike SSR, it may be able to do some things that SSR newspapers cannot. Yufeng agreed without the slightest hesitation. At this moment, another sports car drove over at the scene, and it was actually Hank, X, and Jean who came here. Howard saw X and hurried over. And Yufeng was suddenly entangled by the little girl of the chin, and the appearance of a little wife shushing and asking for warmth made Yufeng can't help but cry and laugh. This Nizi, knowing that that level of explosion could not hurt him at all, actually rushed with Professor X and Hank in the middle of the night. Did he miss him and wanted to find a reason to come over? But when he heard this, he directly glanced at Yufeng, and hummed delicately. "I'm here to see if this is a good thing you did." When Yufeng heard this, he immediately covered the girl's small mouth, causing Chin to laugh for a while. Before you know it, the night has passed. The explosion of the Stark Tower spread around the world in an instant during the day. At this moment, in the SSR department, Paige is answering a call. "Well, knowing Mr. President, I will do it." Boom. Suddenly, the door opened and Howard walked in. Seeing that Paige was on the phone, she sat down on the side and did not make a sound. Paige glanced up. After about 3 minutes, he put down the phone and curled a smile at the corner of his mouth. "Howard, I know what you want to ask. As for why I want to grant you level 10 permissions, all the reasons are in this information, you can see it at a glance." Quote. With that, he placed a disc in front of Howard. "Paige, I know you do everything with your considerations, but, if you want, you, a child who is only 8 or 9 years old, to obtain the 10th level permission, even with our nomination qualifications and connections, I am afraid it will be difficult to succeed. After all, you is basically not a member of our SSR at the moment, where is the reason for allowing an 8 or 9-year-old child who is not even a formal member of us to obtain 10 level permissions?" Howard chattered as he played the disc. When he saw what was playing on the disc, his eyes widened. Howard's face was incredulous. The contents of the disc are actually very simple, a slightly blurry image, and in Howard's experience, it can be seen at once that this image is from a satellite shoot. The image captured in the image is the Earth. It's just that around the normal blue planet picture, a golden light suddenly flashed. This golden light just flashed. The next moment has disappeared. Although this scene feels a little strange, it is not surprising to Howard, mainly because of the data analysis about this golden light in this disk. Light projection analysis. The light source comes from a high-speed moving object. Object analysis, with vital signs response. Vital sign analysis. The energy is huge, it cannot be measured in detail. Energy detection profile. Based on the energy response currently captured, can generate electricity for a city 36 March 7 days 21:59 minutes 29 seconds. The degree of risk detection and analysis, the specifics are not known, and it is tentatively classified as high risk, according to the regulations. Quote. Under a lot of detection and analysis, there is also a bunch of data. Match detection, biological response match, feather. Match identity, mutant, with elemental and high-speed movement ability. Quote. Biological response matching similarity 69.2%. Howard stared intently for a while, and by the end of the image, his face had returned to calm. Looking at Paige, he said, "Paige, are you saying that Yuhei is the special light that is captured by the satellite?" Paige nodded. "More than that, Howard. When you gave me the information of you before, I had already discovered this strange satellite image, and the light was not actually a flash, but orbiting the Earth. The reason why it was captured by satellite imagery at the beginning is only because the speed at the beginning was not fast enough, equivalent to running warms up in general." Quote. And then, that speed was too fast for the satellite to capture. Later, you gave me Yu's information, and also learned that you also used his ability to save Tony's troublemaking child. I was curious, so I matched the biological reactions of the two, and found that they actually reached a similarity of more than 50%. Howard, do you remember our plan for the path of SSR development? Howard nodded. Remember, for the future SSR, we want to transform it into an international strategic defense attack and logistics support agency, beyond the concept of the state, infiltrating power and intelligence around the world, and even in the universe. Quote. Saying that, he couldn't help but flash his eyes. Is Paige you want to? Paige smiled slightly and nodded. Not bad, I want to train you into a future director. Quote. An ordinary person, no matter how good he is at various secret agent skills, leadership skills, political skills, etc., is still an ordinary person after all. He will be subject to all kinds of intrigues, national containment, and hydra lurking in the shadows. No matter how powerful he is, he will never be able to lead SSR to what we want, let alone enter the universe and explore alien civilizations. But you is different. It is clear that Yu's ability is extraordinary, not just as it appears on the surface. What's more important is that Yu is still a child, and he is very malleable. And Yu's mutant identity is absolutely secret to the outside world, and others will only think that he is a scientifically gifted child, and will relax their vigilance against him. Quote. At the same time, Howard, think about it, what will those old guys think if we nominate an 8 or 9-year-old child for level 10 permissions? When Howard heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. Oh, yes, what would others think of nominating an 8 or 9-year-old child with a crucial 10-level authority? With the current status of the two of them, if there is anything else that cannot be controlled in SSR, it is the 10-level authority. And at this time, they nominated an 8 or 9-year-old child, insisting that this child have 10-level permissions, which is obviously to use this child as a puppet to let them control the 10-level permissions in disguise. But any politician with some brains will definitely think so. The corners of Paige's mouth curled up, and said, letting you obtain 10-level permissions will definitely be greatly opposed. But with the two of us, by all means, it can still be achieved. It's just that after that, the situation of the two of us will be extremely dangerous, because if we kill the two of us, then anyone who has mastered the feathers is equivalent to mastering the 10 levels of authority. Quote. It's just that they probably won't dream that the two of us are actually nothing. You is not just an ordinary child. And more importantly, behind you, there is a whole school of mutants. Howard already fully understood Paige's thoughts. As a child, Yu is fine if he does not obtain the 10th level permission. Once he obtains it, it will be worth twice as much and will receive strong attention from all forces. But the forces will not harm Yu. Just targeting him and Paige, killing him and Paige, the two manipulators, is equivalent to controlling the highest authority of SSR. This is to direct the water of calamity to themselves, so that in this time, all resources are used to quickly cultivate the feathers. Howard doesn't care. After all, they are old and will one day decay and die, but their plans and ideals need to be inherited. And that heir is you. It's just that there is one last point that he very much does not understand. No matter how extraordinary the ability of the feather, no matter how malleable, but it's only been a few days since I entered SSR, and I and Paige have only met and communicated once. Why does Paige actually trust you so much, and think that you will definitely achieve the goals of the two of them for the future SSR? Listening to Howard's question, Paige smiled. Because I like that kid. This is a woman's intuition. Quote. Howard. The explosion of the Stark Tower set off a wave of terrorist attacks on fishing boats around the world, but the frenzy subsided within a few days. For the people of all countries around the world, especially in the current Cold War period, such a terrorist attack is like a depth charge that can provoke a tsunami, but I don't know what kind of force interfered behind it, and soon this matter subsided. And for Yu Feng, the initiator of the explosion of the Stark building, he basically didn't care about all this. His mind was on studying the cosmic cube, the space gem. When Paige promised to nominate him with a 10-level permission, although this permission could not be possessed for a while, Yu Feng could directly participate in the study of space gems at the moment. Right now, under the leadership of Howard, Yu Feng is studying the dark matter energy particles of a space gem. This energy particle emits a blue light. With the contact with the light particles of Yu Feng, this space gem energy particle was actually cold, and it did not have any reaction with the light particles. There is no convergence, but there is no exclusion either. This made Yu Feng a little novel. Only when his light particles are in the state of black light particles, the azure energy particles extracted from the space gem will be attracted and then integrated into the black light particles. However, the absorption effect is far inferior to the dark energy extracted by black light particles from the dark dimension. It seems that this space gem will only react after being absorbed by my database genes as mysterious substances. Yu Feng secretly said in his heart. In fact, all mysterious substances can have special reactions with Yufeng's light particles, and they must first be absorbed by the flash into his database genes. For example, the phoenix power of the piano. It was he who absorbed the dark phoenix personality that produced other additional effects with his shining fruit ability. Another example is the PIM particle. When absorbed along with the zero matter, the PIM particle has a special amplification and reduction reaction to its light particles. So to sum up, if you want the energy of the space gem to really react with his light particles, you must first absorb the space gem into his database genes. It's just that at the moment, of course, Yufeng will not be so hasty to put the space treasure. Gotta collect the 6 infinity stones again. Huh. While studying, suddenly Yufeng's eyes moved. Then in an instant, his figure disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already dressed in casual clothes, appeared next to a blonde girl wearing sunglasses on the streets of London, England, and said with a grin, "This big sister, you are so beautiful, you should not refuse to invite me to ice cream." The blonde girl saw Yufeng, who suddenly appeared next to her. The corners of her mouth twitched slightly, and then helplessly took off her sunglasses and looked at Yufeng a little speechlessly. "I said can you have a little sign when you appear next time, scare me." Saying that, he glanced at Yufeng. This blonde is the witch she hasn't seen in a while. When the witch left, Yufeng gave her a locator she made, and if she found some information about the mysterious substance, she only needed to press a button when she wanted to contact him, and Yufeng could receive the signal and reach her destination in an instant. Now that the witch contacted him, she thought she should have found some information about the mysterious substance. For mysterious substances, Yufeng naturally said that the more the better. What's more, he is currently studying experiments that fuse multiple mysterious substances, and more mysterious substances are needed as materials. I recently discovered something interesting. After a little trouble, the witch pulled Yufeng to an ice cream shop, ordered 2 ice creams, and then whispered to Yufeng, "You said you wanted to find some mysterious substances, so I thought of a story that Charles told me when I was a child." Quote, "That story is the legend of some ancient European family. Legend has it that more than 1,000 years ago, a god appeared in the ancient European land, and people believed in this god, and established a mysterious religious organization. Only later this god was sealed by some rebels with conspiracy and trickery." Quote, "Oh." When Yufeng heard this, he couldn't help but feel that this legend seemed a little familiar. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed in my mind. Isn't this the origin of Hydra? And the so-called God is actually the first alien created by the Kree people on the Earth after genetic experiments, beehives. It turned out that the news that the witch had found for him was actually this. Yufeng couldn't help but cry and laugh in his heart. The witch naturally did not know what Yufeng was thinking, and continued to mysteriously. I thought that many ancient things are very mysterious, maybe there are some mysterious substances you need, so I went to investigate the situation of the believers in this legend. As a result, an ancient family that fits the legend of believers was discovered, and the location of this family was found." Quote, "Oh, found the family location." Quote, Yufeng's gaze moved slightly when he heard this. The ancient European family that believed in the hive was actually a family called Malik. However, as far as Yufeng knows, the Malik family was originally in Europe, and has left Europe after several changes, and with the transformation of Hydra's power, the power has gradually become deeply entrenched in the political circle centered on Washington. The Malik family is an orthodox, conservative group belonging to Hydra. And the Hydra, represented by the Red Skull, belongs to the radical faction. The Hydra forces, led by the Malik family, mainly attack the American political circle, and the radical leaders of the Hydra forces should be vigorously developed in the Soviet Union for now. Of course, these feather maples actually don't care. He was somewhat interested in the witch's claim to have found the location of the ancient European family. The ancient Malik family does have a suspected mysterious substance. Cretionite. It is precisely because of the existence of the Cretion stone that the Malik family has a channel to continuously send fresh flesh to the hive, and while providing parasites for the hive, find a way to bring the hive back to Earth. It's just that after several changes, after leaving Europe, Yufeng remembers that the Cretion stone should have been lost in the hands of the Malik family, right? It seems that only a small piece of the Cretion stone exists in the Malik family. That huge Cretan stone, where it last appeared, seemed to be, in the afterlife, a mysterious area where the inhumans of Earth gather. I also got news from the Caliban side. Recently around the ancient family location, there have been traces of mutants, but the guy in Caliban said that those mutants, he couldn't track them, he could only find a rough range based on some clues. The witch took a bite of ice cream gracefully and continued, I think we can go there and investigate, at your speed, it shouldn't take much time. Quote. Probing. Yu Feng glanced at the witch, that is, the specific location and location, whether there is really a mysterious substance there, you still don't know. Quote. Aha. The witch smiled and glanced at Yu Feng. The red lips looked very tempting, with your super speed, but it can save me a lot of effort, not to mention, wouldn't it be more fun to play a scavenger hunt with Ikei's little brother? Quote. Yu Feng glanced at the witch speechlessly. All right. If you're happy. Thinking that he has nothing important to do recently, Yu Feng is also happy to play this treasure hunt game with the witch. If he really finds the Cretan stone, maybe he can use the Cretan stone to go to the planet where the hive was exiled. He knew that the planet where the hive was exiled also had a civilization, but it was later destroyed by the hive, but now in the 70s, maybe that civilization has not been destroyed. At the same time, perhaps, there will be some special mysterious substances in that alien civilization. 10 minutes later, as the golden light flashed, two figures gradually appeared in an ancient building complex. The buildings already appear somewhat dilapidated. It is clear that there are many traces of war here, which should have been devastated by artillery fire during World War II, so that no one has been around here until now. Yu Feng and the witch wandered around in this ancient building ruins, and from time to time you could see a few skull bones and some scattered dust ruins, which looked slightly mad, especially at this moment. The sky was still a little dark, and night had gradually fallen. The mind moved. Suddenly, brilliant light particles flowed around Yu Feng's body, condensing into a ball of light and falling in his hand, illuminating the surroundings. Hey, your abilities are really beautiful, Yu. The witch took a golden ball of light that Yu Feng gave her, sighed, and her eyes lit up. Is this the location of the ancient European family you are talking about? Yu Feng's eyes turned. Some people should have lived a few days ago, but now it seems that they have all left, and this ancient building should have been abandoned. Quote. Good. The witch nodded and said, I heard that the descendants of that ancient family were constantly transferring material property in the past few years, and then all disappeared. At that time, I heard that there were traces of mutants active everywhere. To be honest, I had been here in the first place, but unfortunately Caliban didn't seem to sense the mutant aura here. Quote. Ka, the witch said slowly, but at this moment a strange sound suddenly sounded. The witch's ears moved, and suddenly her body ran up with great agility, and at this moment, there seemed to be a shadow flashing in front of her. Yu Feng looked at this scene lightly. Suddenly, the witch felt that the scenery in front of her changed, and she found that she had arrived in front of a dilapidated ancient bell tower-like building, and there was a strange-looking man in front of her. This man, there are no eyes. However, although he did not have eyes, he seemed to be able to see Yu Feng and the witch girl, and when he found that the two suddenly appeared in front of him, he suddenly looked startled, but quickly calmed down and said in a low voice. What are you? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.